We drink it, cook with it, bathe in it. Each of us uses an average of 170 gallons a day of it. It makes up 70% of the human body. It's vital to every organ, gives shape to every cell, cushions the brain, makes up 83% of our blood. Without it, arms wouldn't flex, eyes couldn't see, and the heart wouldn't beat. Water. We couldn't live a week without it. Water is a precious resource, vital to our lives and our economy. The fact that we have a safe, reliable drinking water supply contributes to our health and our high productivity. In fact, poor drinking water quality is related to 80% of all diseases in many developing countries. In the United States and Canada, we enjoy the safest, most reliable drinking water in the world. The fact that we have a safe drinking water supply means we don't need to spend productive hours just collecting our daily water, as many people around the world do. Describing what's in our drinking water and whether it's safe is the aim of this program. Is it safe to drink? Hello, I'm Linda Benzel. This is a time of major change in the public water supply community. New health data, better science, more regulation, and pollution are challenging water providers and their customers as never before. Our well-being and how much we pay to protect it are at stake. If you compare the cost of water in other industrialized parts of the world, our water is very inexpensive. But what's really in our water?
I always wonder if my water's okay when it tastes funny. You know, it makes you wonder sometimes.
With all the chemicals that they put in it nowadays, I don't know if it's safer to have it come from a spring, from a mountain, or come through your tap.
I think problems have happened in this country with the degree and the amount of the safety of our water.
Should we be concerned about what's in our water?
I think everyone should be concerned about where their water comes from, how it's treated, and how it's transported into their homes.
Anything that man puts into their body, they should be interested in. Therefore, they should feel confident that the water they're drinking is safe to drink.
Drinking water isn't just H2O. It's a complex mixture of chemicals, minerals, even biological life. Most of them are good, a few are bad, and that's where the water utilities job begins. Describing what's in our drinking water and whether it's safe is the aim of this program. Many of us think of water only in a personal sense, drinking it, cooking with it, bathing in it. What we don't immediately recognize is the fact that water is important to the way we live. If we look around, we see that almost everything we touch or eat or play with takes a substantial amount of water to produce. These stores, this sidewalk, even this entire mall wouldn't be here without water. In fact, it took gallons of water just to create what I'm wearing. Water is important to our lives and our lifestyles. How does all this water reach us? Well, it's drawn from lakes, streams, or wells, treated here in your community's water utility, and then piped to you through an extensive distribution system.
Utilities who provide drinking water must treat all water to potable water standards, even though very little of that water is actually used for consumptive purposes.
Much of the water we use is untreated. In general, this water is reserved for things like irrigation for agriculture, industrial uses, and other purposes. And most of the water that is treated is not consumed. Every day, each of us uses an average of 120 gallons of treated water, yet we drink only 2 quarts. Regardless, the water utility must treat each drop as though it will be consumed. Less than a century ago, people in the United States and Canada had cause to worry about their drinking water. Epidemic diseases like typhoid and cholera were caused by waterborne bacteria. That changed in 1908 when chlorine was introduced as a water disinfectant.
The health benefits of chlorine, which has been used as a water disinfectant since the early part of the century, have been tremendous. Chlorine has been very effective in helping to prevent the transmission of waterborne infectious diseases over the years.
Chlorination, filtration, and other water treatment advances have virtually eliminated waterborne epidemics in the United States and Canada. But keeping our water safe is still a challenge. In fact, ensuring a safe and sufficient drinking water supply has become more difficult.
As our technology has developed over the years, we are now able to detect more and more contaminants in our water. And these contaminants can be detected in smaller and smaller amounts. In fact, traces of these contaminants can now be detected. And it's not due to the new contaminants that are in our water, but it's due to the new detection methods that have developed over and over the years.
In this 8-ounce glass of water, there are dozens of substances. Some are very beneficial. Some are suspected of being health risks. So, does that mean we should worry about drinking our water?
No, they should not be worried. They should feel assured that no matter where they travel in this country, that the water is safe and will not cause any unreasonable risk. Now, quite often people are concerned about zero risk. Unfortunately, zero risk is an impossible goal. We can't guarantee zero risk, and even if we wanted to and willing to spend all our resources, it would be impossible to achieve.
I think if you receive your water from a public water supply, and if they are able to comply with all of the existing standards, that no, you shouldn't need to worry about your water. But I think you should understand about your water what kinds of compounds that you can find, because water differs from city to city and area to area.
Remember that drinking water is a trade-off. We add disinfectants to kill bacteria that cause the terrible diseases like typhoid and cholera. We don't have that problem anymore. We have a small trade-off. The trade-off is that we may have some very small chance of having a slightly increased risk in cancer, one extra cancer in 1 million people, or maybe a very small increased risk in adverse birth defects. Again, extremely low increase, perhaps 1 in 1 million. So given that trade-offs, people can feel assured that the drinking water is safe.
Water supply professionals work hard to provide the quality of water their customers want and need. They make sure that the water meets state and federal health regulations.
We do a lot of testing for things that aren't even regulated yet to make sure that we have a good assessment of what might be out there as a possible future risk.
It's very important to be ahead of this curve, to be looking towards the future and seeing what some of those emerging concerns are, to begin to test for those things now, to begin to look at what kind of treatment technologies might be required to deal with that in the future.
Water providers also ensure that we have enough water round the clock every day of the year for about the cost of a daily newspaper. The technology exists to remove virtually every contaminant from water. However, the cost would be enormous and the benefit questionable. For example, the semiconductor industry uses ultra-pure water, in essence distilled water, to manufacture its products. The cost for refining this water is many times the typical water rates that you and I pay. And even if we wanted to pay that much for ultra-pure water, we'd have to find a new way of getting it to our homes and businesses. Ultra-pure water might corrode most pipes in place today, and it would be very difficult and expensive to replace every pipe. And once that water reached us, would we be happy with it? Ultra-pure water tastes flat to most people. The challenge for water providers is to find a balance, a treatment level at which customers feel comfortable with both the safety and price of their water. That comfort level might differ from community to community. A major player in this juggling act is the United States Environmental Protection Agency. It establishes regulations to control drinking water contaminants. Suppliers are required by law to meet federal health regulations, and many water providers are committed to surpassing these minimum standards set by the EPA in the most cost-effective ways for their customers. Communities may choose to upgrade their water quality beyond minimum federal standards. The public should stay involved and work with water providers to make these important decisions.
The public can only participate effectively if they know what's going on. And so I think it's really an obligation, but also good sense, good business sense for utilities these days to stay in touch with the public.
Clean drinking water doesn't just fall out of the sky. It's produced by tens of thousands of U.S. and Canadian water treatment facilities. All sorts of natural and man-made contaminants are identified and removed so our water meets federal health standards. Every public water system tests its water before and after treatment, and every major city tests up to 250,000 times a year. The way our water looks, smells, and tastes depends on its source, how well the treatment plant is run, the technology used, and how much we invest in maintenance and improvements. Sometimes a problem with our drinking water has little to do with the utility. Sometimes it hits closer to home.
Charleston, South Carolina, a beautiful, historic community, had a unique set of problems of its own. Many homes and businesses in Charleston had very high levels of lead. Using a combination of public education and increased treatment, the community's exposure to lead has been reduced.
Lead is a toxic substance that can affect red blood cells, the kidneys, and the nervous system. It's most dangerous for infants and children.
Almost none of the nation's reservoirs, wells, and other water supplies naturally contain lead. It gets into the water through lead pipelines and plumbing in homes. Even solder used in copper pipes can leach lead. The use of these lead materials was banned in 1986.
The houses in this area and this house were built before the Civil War. When they were first plumbed around the turn of the century, they had lead plumbing in them. Since then, there's been a number of owners, and the plumbing's been changed into copper with lead solder. Now, eventually, we hope to change it to where it's copper with no lead solder. Eventually is the key word there, of course, because it's expensive to do that. You have to tear out the walls, you have to get the old plumbing out. It's a real inconvenience. And in the meantime, what we're doing about the lead in the water is simply flushing the lines. The people who sell water here in town have instructed us to simply let the lines run for 30 seconds or so, and that flushes any water that has high levels of lead or copper in it out of the lines, and so then it's safe for us to consume.
The Charleston Water Utility encourages citizens and businesses to replace their lead pipes. The utility has also added special chemicals to the water to reduce the lead problem.
Well, we've always used pH control to make the water more stable, but recently we started adding corrosion control chemicals to inhibit the water's ability to come in contact with lead, thereby reducing the amount of dissolved lead in the water. In the few months we've been doing this, we've seen substantial reductions in home lead levels.
Treatment at the provider and changes being made by homeowners mean families no longer have to worry about lead from their drinking water.
We've done a lot of public education campaigns. We've had a lot of media coverage. In fact, the people of Charleston probably know more about their drinking water now than they ever have before. They understand what a valuable resource their water is and how much attention it does deserve.
Families in Des Moines, Iowa have been learning a lesson in nitrate contamination. Nitrate is especially common in rural areas. It gets into streams and groundwater through fertilizers and animal wastes.
Nitrates is a little bit different because the group that's really at risk with nitrates are infants. And what happens is nitrates prevents the blood from uptaking oxygen, and we result in what we call a blue baby syndrome.
Because of the potential health risks and to meet health regulations, the Des Moines Water Works wasted no time in telling the community about the problem with nitrate in its water supply.
Well, we violated the nitrate standard for 2 years due to the high runoff that we were seeing in the Raccoon River. And our customers were basically saying that they wanted it and anticipated and expected the Des Moines Water Works to solve the problem. We studied various different alternatives and ended up coming up with an ion exchange nitrate removal facility that was constructed. The response from the citizenry was, this is what we expected, and this is what we obtained, and this is what we're willing to pay for.
The system cost about $4 million and required a 9% rate increase. Together, through open discussion, the community and the utility decided it was worth it. The utility is also working with local farmers to reduce the amount of toxic chemicals that get into the water in the first place.
Well, we want to use enough nitrogen to get a good yield and still be economical and safe.
The citizens have to know what it is that is going to be the end result of using the technology. If they see that there is an improvement in the quality of their life as a result of the technology, and if they perceive that it's a reasonable cost for that increased technology, then they will accept it. But those are two very key points that need to be addressed in any kind of communication with the public. Is number one, is it going to improve the quality of their life, and is the cost reasonable, sensible, responsible?
Recently, Des Moines had a problem of a different kind. Severe flooding washed out everything close to the river. Office buildings were under dozens of feet of water. And despite protecting the water treatment plant with a fortress of sandbags, it succumbed. The city was without drinking water. Not having any drinking water made residents appreciate this resource like never before.
It's a hospital. They've been trucking water in, and then the employees have had to go down and get like barrels of water to bring up to the floors for the patients to use for the bathrooms to bathe them.
It just makes you really think about how much you use water. You don't realize how precious it is until you don't have it.
There are a lot of people have stated that they didn't realize the actual value of water until they were out of it.
Can't always go to the bathroom when you want to, and can't have a drink of water when you want to. You gotta go someplace to shower. It's a pain in the butt.
The very way we disinfect our water to kill bacteria and other living organisms can pose a health problem if not performed properly. When these rotting leaves and twigs combine with germ-killing chemicals, byproducts are created that are causing concern among some experts.
Potential health risks that may be associated with the byproducts of chlorine and the other chemical disinfectants, I don't think should be ignored. But we have to be very careful that we're not trading one risk for another. We must remember that our primary concern is the prevention of waterborne diseases. When we try to reduce chemical risks, we must be very careful that we don't increase microbial risks.
Some communities are using other water purification methods in addition to chlorine. In Tucson, they're using a process called ozonation. Several new technologies to reduce byproducts are being studied. Water providers are seeking the most effective methods with the least amount of risk. Even in relatively pristine areas, water isn't safe to drink without treatment. Virtually every source of water harbors bacteria and parasites that can cause health problems.
Waterborne illness can be either mild or severe. Sometimes hospitalization is required, and occasionally deaths may result from waterborne illness.
Thousands of citizens in Milwaukee were recently affected by a serious outbreak of waterborne disease in their city's water supply. Many people experienced flu-like symptoms and were forced to boil their drinking water before consuming it. Fortunately, this type of disease outbreak caused by drinking water is rare because of the careful operation of water treatment plants. But that care must be exercised on a daily basis to prevent microbial contamination present in rivers and lakes from entering our water supply. If there is a short-term problem that requires immediate attention, the water utility takes corrective action.
In the long term, the solution is less clear. Technology exists to remove all disease-causing organisms from water, but how much is necessary? Water providers, scientists, and regulators are working together to find a proper balance between cost and microbial and chemical risks.
The water we use comes from surface sources like rivers and streams. It's also tapped from groundwater sources, such as underground aquifers. Many things homeowners and businesses dispose of go into our water sources and eventually end up in a treatment plant. And it's not just a problem created by industry. Everyone needs to understand how they can reduce their impact on the environment in very simple ways. Recycling, for one thing. Every year, the equivalent of all of the oil spilled by the Exxon Valdez oil tanker is dumped into America's landfills and sewers by home mechanics. All of this oil can be safely and easily recycled, and that's just one example. Pollution from multiple sources rather than one specific industry is the biggest problem facing water suppliers today. Pollution from things like household solvents, industrial waste, road debris, and farm fertilizers that run off into rivers or seep into groundwater.
The first most important principle, I think, in water quality and water supply is you start with the very best source, the most protected source. And I think that's the focus of a lot of effort now in the Clean Water Act, for example. If we can prevent contaminants from getting into water supplies, we're going to be safer in the long run. It's going to be much less costly to comply with new regulations as they come along. In fact, new regulations may not be necessary if we can get a much better system for preventing the degradation that could otherwise occur through improper disposal.
Cincinnati knows firsthand about the effects of pollution on the drinking water supply. The city sits on the banks of the Ohio River, and after several major chemical spills in these waters, Cincinnati wanted additional safeguards. Water utility manager Jack DeMarco agrees the city needed more protection.
We serve about 800,000 people drinking water from this industrial waterway. That's an enormous responsibility and challenge that's often difficult to meet. Basically, our job is to take this raw water source and make it safe to drink at all times and also have a pleasant taste.
After several major chemical spills on the river, Cincinnati wanted additional safeguards. The result was a $54.5 million improvement to their treatment facility, making it one of the finest in the world.
There was very little opposition to the upgrade. Our customers knew that they were getting an improved water quality. Everybody pays a little bit more on their water bill, but they know they're getting a safer water.
With so many sources of pollution, Cincinnati chose to go above and beyond with its treatment facility. Water providers in many communities are looking for answers to problems they didn't create, but must solve to protect the public's health.
Cincinnati has solved its problems for now. Across the U.S. and Canada, many water providers and communities are deciding how to handle the challenges specific to their areas.
Here are two very different approaches: Pinedale, Wyoming, and Tucson, Arizona. Citizens in Pinedale, Wyoming think they know more about their water than most anyone. The EPA wants them to upgrade their treatment facility because of a concern over Giardia, a waterborne parasite. They'd rather not.
You're talking 1,000 people and $1 million filtration plant. There has to be a better way. People can't, I mean, there's no way you could afford that.
When you've got the fourth purest, or depending on whose statistics you read, somewhere between the fourth and the 10th purest lake in the nation, you know, I think they can worry about other people a lot more than what they need to worry about us.
Folks here say the water's fine. They say the EPA is overreacting.
We've been drinking this water for 50 years that I know of. I've never had any problem with it. In fact, it's pretty good stuff. See how clear it is?
EPA is hammering on the town of Pinedale particularly because we have a surface water supply that is being overregulated in our instance because of the quality of our water. Now, if we're getting our water from rivers that are being polluted by factories, by industry, that's one thing. But when we have a lake such as this that chemically is pure, bacteriologically is pure, and they start saying we have a potential hazard if we don't filter, if we don't chlorinate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then it's putting the town into a situation where we have a little over 1,000 people in the town to spend all kinds of money to meet their rules and regulations that we don't consider necessary.
While Pinedale Lake appears to be relatively pristine, it doesn't mean that they're particularly risk-free. Some of the effects could be occurring and people don't realize that it could be attributed to their water. They may not report it, so a physician or a public health official may not be aware that there might be a problem related to the water supply.
Some of the more vocal citizens may be saying that they don't mind the exposure. They don't have the option of speaking for everyone, for infants, for children, for the elderly, and for the remainder of the public you're not immediately hearing from.
Well, what's going to happen is that the EPA is going to enforce their rules and regulations over hell and high water. And the town is going to have to eventually put in a filtration system to meet their requirements.
The EPA, the water provider, and the community must come to an agreement that the citizens of Pinedale can live with. No matter how the issue is resolved, people here are now well educated on the risks of not upgrading their system and aware of the costs of adding more protection. The community plans to weigh its options and come up with a solution that complies with the law and meets the community's needs.
Hundreds of miles away, the city of Tucson has embarked on a public education campaign. The new focus on water quality grew out of a citizen advisory group, a panel appointed by the city council and water supplier.
Tucson is in the middle of the Sonoran Desert and gets about 11 inches of rain a year. And so water in this part of the United States is a very, very important subject. And there's no difficulty at all getting people interested here in issues of water supply.
Tucson recognizes just how important water is to its families and its economy. The citizens here are working with the water provider and getting involved in determining the quality of their water.
I think community involvement is definitely a must for utilities, and the public needs to be involved. They need to know how their money is being spent. They need to know about the quality of the product they're being delivered. They need to know how the services that are provided to them work.
Pinedale and Tucson may seem worlds apart, but they share one thing: the desire to choose an appropriate level of quality for their community's water supply.
We enjoy the safest, most reliable drinking water in the world. It's absolutely vital to our health, our economy, and our everyday lives.
Day after day, water suppliers provide us with safe drinking water around the clock, and they've become so proficient at it that sometimes we forget just how big the job of cleaning our water really is.
We assume that every drop of water we produce is going to wind up in somebody's body.
As technology improves, we will no doubt find new contaminants in the water we drink and new technologies to remove them. That's why communities are supporting water quality issues like never before. Consumers are concerned about water quality, rates, research, source protection and development, staff and system improvements.
I think my water is affordable. I think because of the quality of water that I get, it's worth the extra expense.
I think I rely on the city or whoever the water department is to make sure it's safe to drink.
We drink tap water all the time.
With new information and technology comes healthy debate. The challenge is to maintain a delicate balance to continue to protect public health and do it at a reasonable cost. That's what suppliers want, what the government wants, and most of all, that's what water consumers want. On that, there is no debate.